Happy New Year, and welcome to the first episode of 2025 and to the Sal Greco Show. I'm your host, Sal Greco. I hope everybody had a safe New Year's Eve last night. Listen, it's been a wild year, to say the least, 2024, and we're here for a new beginning. And we're trying to close a chapter on a lot of corrupt things that are going on all over New York City and pretty much all around the world. So for all the new people on here that are in the audience, thank you very much from the bottom of my heart for subscribing to this podcast on YouTube and Rumble and also on the podcast streaming platforms. And if you haven't, please, if you're on YouTube right now, please hit that like button, hit that share button, hit that subscribe button, hit the notification button. If you're on Rumble, please hit the Rumble button, click the subscribe button. And also, if you're listening on the podcast streaming platforms that carry the Sal Greco Show, please hit the like button, share, and subscribe. This will be a very good episode, I believe, because we have a special guest. And I think everybody that has watched the Sal Greco Show now for almost a year will remember this name. And it's Eric Dym from the Finest Unfiltered podcast. So as promised, on New Year's Day, my good buddy and co-host of the Finest Unfiltered podcast, former retired now NYPD Lieutenant Eric Dym. Brother, first off, Happy New Year. Hope you had a safe and sound one with your family.
Happy New Year, brother. 2025. We're coming in strong between the Finest Unfiltered and Sal Greco and Marlon Bethel. We're coming in 2025. Shout out to everyone that's a friend and listener. And shout out to the haters and trolls. Let's get right into it, brother.
Yeah, Eric. I'd like to say congratulations. Your podcast is booming. I see it, but I see a lot of people in the media cover what you and John are talking about, but never want to write as reported by John McCarr and Eric Dym. I constantly see that. It's like we're all three of us, or now all four, including Marlon Bethel, who I had on the previous episode, we're like lepers. Or my favorite word, Eric, we're fringe. We're the fringe. We're not out
there.
Radicals.
We're radicals.
We're not like astute people, astute from New York City Police Department. But so we have a bunch of topics I wanted to cover, and no one better than you, especially on New Year's Day, where I'm sure everybody is either, hungover or they're just waking up. So I figured let's roll to all these new current topics. So first one I like here is there was an article, and this is the article right here. This is in the Staten Island Live. Okay, this is about Jeffrey Madre, former chief of department, and of course we all know about his scandal. So I want to read this out, and then Eric, I'll give you the mic, and you give me your thoughts on this. So, NYPD top cop who abruptly resigned amid sex for OT allegations was shot on Staten Island in the 90s over alleged love triangle. Okay, and this was in the Staten Island Live, and it's by Scott R. Axelrod. Former NYPD Chief of Department Jeffrey Madre, who resigned earlier this month amid allegations that he demanded sex from a subordinate in exchange for opportunities to earn extra pay, has an unusual tie to Staten Island that dates back to the 90s. He was shot more than 30 years ago during an altercation with two men in New Brighton, allegedly over a love triangle. The advanced StatenIslandLive.com previously reported that Madre, then 25 and already a cop, a Queens resident assigned to the 110th precinct, was off duty when he suffered the bullet wound outside the Richmond Terrace house on June 6, 1993. According to court documents, Madre was visiting an ex-girlfriend when he became embroiled in an argument with another man at her apartment at about 11:30 p.m. Prosecutors said Madre was inside the building for about an hour longer. And when he came out, they contended he was ambushed by the man and his girlfriend, Ismael Calistro. Police allege that Calistro fired 14 shots, striking Madre in the left wrist. Wow. Two trials followed with both men accused of attempting to murder Madre. The alleged rival love interest was acquitted of attempted murder, but convicted of attempted assault and possession of a weapon and sentenced to 2 to 6 years in prison. A Staten Island jury would then acquit Calistro of attempted murder in 1996, but convicted him of attempted assault and criminal possession of a weapon. He was released from prison in 2007 after serving a 7.5 to 15-year sentence, but later was sent back to prison after running a car into 3 officers. There's more from the trials. First to be tried was the man painted by his defense as a rival love interest and who had argued with Madre at the apartment of a woman they'd both dated shortly before the violence unfolded. The people do not contend that he pulled the trigger, but he ordered the shooting. He set Madre up for the shooting. Fortunately, Jeffrey Madre wasn't killed, prosecutors said in the trial. Madre told the jury he was in the woman's apartment and had an argument because the defendant allegedly beat her. The defense lawyer at trial, Eugene Lamb, claimed in court that his client was not aware Madre was a police officer and that Madre took a shot before Calistro pulled a gun. A gunfight ensued that was never intended, Lamb said. Meanwhile, a housing cop told the jury that she and her partner observed Madre run toward their police car, displaying his gun and shield, saying, "I'm an officer from Queens and I've been shot." So there's more in this article. Madre under fire. Recent allegations against Madre were brought by NYPD Lieutenant Quatisha Epps, who filed a complaint against the city with the Federal Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, claiming that Madre engaged in quid pro quo sexual harassment by coercing her to perform unwanted sexual favors in exchange for overtime opportunities in the workplace. Epps, who holds an administrative post in Madre's office, said that when she finally pushed back on Madre's demands, he retaliated by claiming she was abusing overtime, prompting the department to launch a review. Epps' attorney, Eric Sanders, said she was then suspended without pay despite putting in a retirement notice. Miss Epps has endured profound harm at the hands of individuals who exploited their positions of power for personal gain, Sanders said in a statement. The retaliation she faced for standing up to his abuse underscores the need for immediate reform to address systematic failures within the NYPD. Epps was reportedly the department's top earner in fiscal year 2024, earning more than $400,000, more than half of it in overtime pay. Sanders said that any overtime his client worked was at the request of Madre and approved by him and other department officials. The NYPD declined to comment on the complaint, but Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg's office said it's investigating. These are extremely serious and disturbing claims that allegedly occurred at NYPD headquarters in Manhattan, Bragg's office said in a statement. Madre's attorney, Lambro, in a statement to the New York Post, called Epps' claims completely meritless. What a convenient time to accuse somebody of misconduct after she's caught stealing time, Lambro told the outlet. She's obviously drowning and in the deep end of the pool without a lifesaver. She wants to take down as many people as she can. Chief of Patrol John Schell has been named as interim chief of the department, and Philip Rivera will assume Schell's duties as the head of the patrol division, the NYPD said. Meanwhile, Madre has been the subject of other misconduct allegations, including one from a police captain who says she rebuffed his unwanted advances for years. Eric, what are your thoughts on what you just read and what you just heard?
Oh, my God. First of all, before we get into it, I just want to say that's a spot on. That's a dapper suit, man. I'm liking it.
Thank
I'm
you.
liking it. You're giving Eric Adams a run for his money.
Well, I am a lot taller, so I mean he's a little. I don't know if you know, he's a little guy. Little guy. He's like 5'7" or something. I'm 6'3". People don't realize that, but you know.
Good thing that's standing up. If we actually peel back the layers to this article, first of all, the article is written pretty well. But if we peel back the layers of this article, it would take us days. There's so much valuable information here. Mm-hmm. One thing we know for sure, it shows there's a history and there's a pattern that's of suspicion when it comes to Jeffrey Madre. And the suspicion that, for one, that he hits women, he has a problem with lovers' quarrels, and there's obviously some type of problem when it comes to sexual relationships involving Jeffrey Madre and his correlation to his position in the department. For one, in 1993, he's a police officer. He's involved in a lovers' quarrel. We don't know all the context of this story. You know, why this guy wanted to shoot him. I'm not saying that's right, but I'm saying what led to that. And according to that article, briefly, it just says that his claim, the actual perpetrator himself, the claim was that Jeffrey Madre assaulted the woman. And what do we hear from Tabitha Foster years later? She claimed that she was also sexually assaulted and assaulted by Jeffrey Madre. So we do see a pattern, right? And it's interesting because the police department itself puts blame on police officers when we see patterns. right? When it comes to Civilian Complaint Review Board, if you're a police officer and you receive 3 allegations that are similar to each other, even though you're innocent until found guilty, but if there's 3 allegations that are similar to each other from independent parties, the department sees it as a pattern and a red flag and will hinder you in your career, and they will stop you. You may be modified. They may change your assignment, right, to protect the representation of the police department. So here's Jeffrey Madre showing a pattern for years, and yet he rose to the ranks, and he rose to the highest uniform rank of the police department, the chief of the department, the most powerful uniform member, arguably in the entire world. The NYPD is a vast, large police department of when things are good, 35,000 cops, one of the largest police departments. I'm sorry, if not the largest police department in the entire world in comparison to the largest of some armies. He's a powerful man. We have a history. We have a pattern, and yet he rose to the ranks. Major problem.
Not only are you correct about the patterns, in fact, we were taught as cops, and something I noticed with all my cases is we always look for patterns. Patterns basically details criminality. That's how we always went about it, you know, in the commands, in the precincts. That's how cops do their investigations, patterns. This man has a pattern, whether it's, you know, he's a womanizer. I understand he's, as Eric Sanders called him, a degenerate. I agree with Eric Sanders' analogy that he's a degenerate. He's got a history going back to now 1993. Eric, the best part of this article that sticks out is that the housing cop in her testimony said, he ran out and said, I'm a police officer from Queens. I've been shot. So this guy had the, Eric, really, you got to picture this scene. He's shot in the arm and he's running out saying, I'm a police officer from Queens. I've been shot. Do you think this really even happened? What would you think as a lieutenant sitting in the car having a guy run at you? We don't even know if he has a weapon because he was armed from what you're hearing, because they're saying that he took a shot at the suspect or the defendant or the criminal in that case.
Well, it raised a lot of questions, right? So I worked in the 120 precinct, so I'm familiar with that area very well. And I actually lived in the vicinity. I lived in Stapleton a long time myself. Mm-hmm. So I know the 120 precinct. I know the northern section of Staten Island. And I know, you know, this question, I'm not saying you can't go there, but I do have some questions why you would also go to the Richmond Terrace houses. It's high propensity for violence. You're a police officer. You're working in Queens. You know, you kind of question, like, why would you go there? Why would you put yourself in that position? I'm not saying people can't go to housing projects. I know plenty of good families that live in housing projects, plenty of cops that go there. But if you're involved in some type of lovers quarrel, and apparently it looks like there was some type of conversation worked out or some argument, why would you go do it there? I mean, especially as a police officer, you don't want to put yourself in precarious positions. It just shows the lack of judgment by Jeffrey Madre. It shows that there is a pattern of a lack of judgment, devious behavior, and yet my problem is the hypocrisy. And the hypocrisy is that, Sal, you were wrongfully terminated, and I was unable to get promoted. And I was hindered to get promoted. I had to make a decision to retire. I could not get promoted to the position of captain. I had no discipline my entire career until I received 8 sets of administrative charges for the Civilian Complaint Review Board in a 6-week period. And I was not,
That's great.
I was told I was ineligible to get promoted to captain because of civilian complaints. So my argument was, they're substantiated by the Civilian Complaint Review Board. And I was not afforded due process to take them to administrative trial because I was told I would have to wait 3 more years. So in those respects, you're innocent until proven guilty. So I was innocent of those claims because it was not verified and signed off yet by the police commissioner. And yet I was ineligible for promotion. So my other argument was, okay, show me a chief that does not have a worse record than I do. I'm sorry. Well, show me a chief that has a worse record. Show me a chief that has a worse discipline record than I do. And I would say that's, then I should be promoted. If you can't show me a chief that doesn't have a worse record than me, that if I have the worst one, then I agree. And obviously Jeffrey Madre has a far worse record than the majority of the police department.
Eric, I think speaking on this matter, I believe you do have a case. I believe there will be more to come in the not so distant future in regards to, how promotions are done and all this scam. that we're hearing of how people were getting promoted via envelopes delivered to, I don't know, Jeffrey Madre's house or Consofrito or wherever it is. There's a lot of allegations and rumors, and I believe this will also be something that will be turned out to get investigated. And I believe you have a case because, of course, you have a 3-year window or pending whatever they discover amongst the current investigations. But speaking of current investigations and Jeffrey Madre, I want to show you something that Marlon Bethel posted here. Marlon Bethel posted this on X. And in the prior episode, which was yesterday, Marlon Bethel explained to everyone that he couldn't find Jeffrey Madre's training. It was pulled down. So then he posted this, I believe, a few hours later. And it says right here, and just like that, it's back on there. And look, Eric, there it is, his training record's back online. And it wasn't there at the time when Marlon Bethel posted. Where is it? Because he asked about Chief Beltran, because he was working in the IT office and they knew each other as chiefs. So we suspect that there's a little bit of cronyism there and how that hasn't come out, that Beltran was covering for him. But here we see right there is all the training he received. So apparently he received rape is rape training on 8/19/2024. And that might come in handy when they ask him questions. So Marlon Bethel, he got one over on. He actually proved once again that they scrubbed his record down.
Well, it's no surprise to me. It appears there's nothing off limits when it comes to this administration. So I've heard from credible sources and various rumors and credible sources that are independent from each other that the actual top 400 overtime list that is public to the entire NYPD for all personnel to see was altered when it became public information in the media about the excessive overtime and the abuse of overtime. So from credible sources I hear there's actually different lists that are being transitioned throughout the police department and actually being viewed. So to me, nothing's off limits right now in the police department. It's no surprise to me that we see sometimes you type in through New York to see salaries. And there's numerous members of the upper echelon. Their salaries are missing. There's numerous members of the police department. You can't find them on the CCRB database. So we're seeing a lot of omission when it comes to this administration, just a complete lack of transparency. So to me, it looks like it's a big concealment and cover-up.
Actually, Eric, we also found out while Marlon Bethel was on my show and we were discussing this, that there is a secondary list of top 400 earners. And to be honest, there was a cop who was retired. We don't know when they retired exactly. He was ahead of Lieutenant Epps on the overtime list. There was actually an IT tech who made over 2,000 hours in overtime. Okay. And the only other time since 2017, Marlon Bethel could find anyone on this NYPD in the department, whether they're civilian or uniform, that made in excess of 2,000 hours in overtime was a lieutenant from the 61st Precinct way back in 2017, which was under the failed de Blasio administration. So this now comes up, and it's a civilian who has 2,000 hours in overtime. So you technically are right, Eric. So what are your thoughts on that? We actually proved, Marlon Bethel proved, there is a real top 400 list. And the only reason, by the way, that Lieutenant Epps is the top earner is, as you know, I believe there's a raise involved when you're SA pay or something like that. So she had a slight raise, and because she's a lieutenant, she clears the 200 whatever for the hours. But she's not the number one overtime earner because her hours are less than multiple people on top, including 2 IT techs, which, by the way, are both female, which is another asterisk around that. What are your thoughts on that, Eric?
Well, this highlights 2 different things to me, right? So the first component is obviously this egregious abuse amount of overtime. It's absolute corruption that's going on in the police department. There's no mistake about it. I mean, numerous people have said Sal Greco, John McCarry, Eric Dym, We're complete radicals for pointing out corruption that's going on in the police department. This is the greatest administration by some cops. The overwhelming majority are not happy with this administration, but for some cops that are enjoying the fruits of this benefit are saying this is the greatest administration, which is why they want to suppress our First Amendment speech, because we're putting this information out there. It's completely egregious. And I would say I'm very disappointed. I was disappointed in unions in my last year. As I was leaving the police department, I was under the thumb fighting the Civilian Complaint Review Board. The unions did not represent me properly, and they not represent the police officers and all the members of these unions right now. They're all moving in lockstep, and they're not advocating for the men and women. They put out some stuff on Twitter, and I said to myself, are you advocating for the men and women, or are you fellow henchmen, Justice and Internal Affairs, protecting the upper echelon? And the lines are starting to blur. You really don't see, the unions are not doing their proper representation. They're saying that the overtime problem is because of shortages and protests and other issues going on with the police department. And there may be some small amount to that, but the overwhelming majority of this abuse of overtime is with the administration and the administrative positions at one police plaza who have a tie and nepotism and they're cronies of the upper echelon. And what else? The other second component I want to say to this is that they slept on police officers that they discarded, members of the service that they discarded from the NYPD. I was discarded. John McCarry was discarded. Sal Greco was discarded. And so was Marlon Bethel. Marlon Bethel was an ambitious investigator. And now he's an ambitious investigator while he's off the job. So they slept on myself. They slept on John. They slept on you. They slept on Marlon. And they didn't realize that we were ambitious while we were employed by the NYPD. Why wouldn't we be ambitious afterwards?
Eric, you're always spot on, and you're very articulate, much like Marlon Bethel, who I was floored by his knowledge, his vast knowledge on all these. These are stats that matter, and I hope people pay attention because he comes with receipts. His receipts are numbers, and it's scary because it shows, I believe, here's his straight-up criminality. These guys are a bunch of thugs, and I have something else to show you here, Eric. Here is the actual suspension order of Lieutenant Epps. This was on, December 18th, right? And I had this on X, and again, I'll restate the post here. And I wrote, can NYPD Police Commissioner Jessica Tisch explain why the victim whistleblower, Quatisha Epps, was suspended by the Chief of Department, Jeffrey Madre, who resigned 24 hours after suspending the whistleblower and is the alleged abuser and not suspended himself? And hashtag the Sal Greco Show. Now, Eric, do you see this? Just say yes or no on this. Do you see it says authority chief of department on this order? Does it not say that?
Oh, it's as clear as day. Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. And it's very disturbing. It's very disturbing to look at this.
So this is, you clearly say that it says authority chief of department. So we are like establishing a fact here. So now, with that being said, we have established that suspension is by the order of the chief of department, not the police commissioner, not anyone else above Jeffrey Madre, which could only be the police commissioner. The first deputy commissioner is really an administrative part of the department. So it doesn't come from the police commissioner. The chief of department resigns 24 hours, I believe, after that suspension. He resigns due to the fact of this case, and he is now the abuser who is now being investigated himself from the Manhattan DA's office and the Southern District of New York. They're not only investigating him, but numerous allegations and other, we'll say, nefarious characters in this situation with other, pending investigations that also occurred and other allegations that are also being made right now. So how is it that Jeffrey Madre, who we have 30 days from when he put in his paperwork to suspend in regards to being a subject in a pending investigation, or John Schell, or Kaz Dawdry, or we're going to find out this other lieutenant trainer who is also on these on the lawsuit with other allegations, Miguel Iglesias from Internal Affairs Group 1, who, is relieved of his duties, whatever that means. Eric, why aren't they on the suspension by order of the police commissioner? Why is this allowed to stand and Epps is not reinstated immediately due to this bogus suspension? I mean, Madre suspended her knowing he was leaving 24 hours later. That's what this looks like, and the department is letting it stand.
Well, this is an epic fail, and further validation solidifies that nepotism in the upper echelon is part of the three-tiered system. I always talk about the NYPD. I say there's not a level playing field. There's a three-tiered system. Tier one is nepotism tied to the upper echelon, right? An upper echelon tied to nepotism goes hand in hand. And your tier two is your khaki pants. And your tier three is your general population, the NYPD. And there's different rules for these standards of these tiers of the NYPD. And it's an epic fail by the police commissioner at this time. And it raises questions. And the question is this. Is Jessica Tisch really that white horse that's coming through that's going to clean house? Or is she a patsy to Eric Adams? And the appearance of cleaning the house is a byproduct of these scandals that are actually starting to break on its own. So these are the questions that I have at this point, because honestly, the lines are starting to blur, and I'm not sure at this point. I was hoping she would be this white horse, but I have my doubts.
Yeah, I agree with you, Eric. And the reason I brought this up, because I definitely wanted your analysis on this, is that, for years in the police department, you would get suspended pending an investigation. Here, someone who yields an immense amount of power, technically on the way out the door, suspends the subject of his, of his anger here, that he knows this person is about to, get him in a lot of trouble. And this suspension is still standing, Eric. She's still suspended while he should be suspended, and this woman should be reinstated. She's clearly the victim in this case. I'm baffled that no one's picked this up. No major media is discussing this document, which is real simple. One phone call to the police department and the public deputy commissioner of public information. Is this document correct? Who put this out? Which would have been the chief of department, it's a Salvatore chief of department. And how, why is this allowed to stand? I mean, what do you think, Eric? I mean, that's how I know it to be in the NYPD during our heyday. I don't know if it changed under Eric Adams.
Well, clearly, make sure that you save this document, and here it is. It's document saved on this show. That's going to show here on day 1 of 2025. Happy New Year to everyone, because there's every indication based on the pattern, what we've seen, and also the information that was provided by Marlon Bethel, that this will be doctored and also going further. Make no mistake about it. I have no trust and credibility right now in the upper echelon of the police department. And I wouldn't be surprised if in further depositions, if that document is altered. So look to Sal Greco Show as you see that document is the original document where it's the authority of the chief of department. This is an epic fail. So one thing I do believe in due process. I do believe that Jeffrey Madre, even though he's been riddled with a pattern of suspicious and appearance of impropriety, he was appointed to chief of department. That's an epic fail by who appointed him and who allowed him to go through the ranks. So it's epic fail on Mayor Eric Adams and other leadership of the police department. But since he's there, he's in that position, he does deserve due process. However, during that due process, there should be some type of modification and not actually just let him retire. That's a slap in the face and insult to every police officer, general population, NYPD that's ever been suspended or modified for minor investigations. This is a very serious allegation. He's innocent till proven guilty. Epps has a right to make her allegations and her claims. But one thing we know is fact. Jeffrey Madre is the chief of department, and he oversees operations and administrative, including overtime, and he testified to New York City Council that there's layers of checks and balances that he's involved in when it comes to overtime. And there's an egregious and excessive amount of overtime, and it's factual because the amount of overtime is impossible to actually perform on duty at work. There's no doubt about it that this overtime happened where people were not actually reporting to work. So for those facts alone, he should have been modified or suspended upon his resignation. He should not have been allowed to retire in this manner. And also going even further, Jeffrey Madre had went to the board to get disability, a 3/4 pension, prior to his retirement. Now he needs to go back to get it. But will Jessica Tisch sign off on him getting 3/4? That's another insult to the police department, and it's an insult to the taxpayers in New York City.
Yes, and also the men and women of the police department that are, lacing up their boots, going out there, stopping crime, making arrests, staying for numerous hours, vouchering arrest evidence. And here's their chief of department who's making a mockery of things. And really, he's a criminal with a badge. And so are many others in this upper echelon. It's quite disgusting. But you mentioned one thing. I love your analysis of the three-tier ranks. I'm going to show you something that came up from our friend This is from Sam Antar. This is from Sam Antar on X. Memo to NYPD Daughtry. This is Kaz Daughtry, the Deputy Commissioner of Operations for now. What does, quote, "it's our time," end quote, mean on the bottom of those emails? Eric, what are your thoughts on that? What do you think that means? What is he talking about? Emails, it's our time.
Last night, you and myself and John, we were on a three-way text and we were talking about it. It's like, what is this? So we all agree, like, how to get his hands on these emails. I want to see those emails too. What do you mean by it's our time? And who is our? You're a public servant. You're the NYPD. Could you imagine, Sal, that you or myself or John and Marlon, while we were on the job and we had NYPD professional communication by email and we put on the bottom, it's our time or it's our, there would be heads to roll. That's completely unprofessional. These encrypted messages by the NYPD upper echelon is absolutely embarrassment. It's unprofessional. We see it by John Shell, who's now been awarded the chief of the department, which I think is ridiculous. That's an epic fail by Jessica Tisch, which is why I have my doubts and reservations on is she that white horse. Because John Shell, who's been in pissing matches with on social media with journalists, including this podcast, including you, Sal Greco, been completely unprofessional, embarrassment, puts encrypted messages in his tweets where he puts hashtag EW, meaning Eric Dym, hashtag BMS, building maintenance section, referring to John McCary. He's put other encrypted messages, what I suspect is a reference to you, Sal. So unprofessional. These encrypted messages on the email, they should have to explain, what does that mean? It's our time.
This is the first time hearing about this, and I hope there's some email somewhere that can clarify this, because, it's also funny. I do want you to say one other thing about Kaz Daughtry. Can you explain the story that you heard about One Police Plaza? That something had occurred there. It was something about a video that Kaz Daughtry himself played to the troops.
Just to show you even just the insanity that's going on with the upper echelon. That's why this sex scandal that's going on with Jeffrey Madre and Lieutenant Epps is just a spoke on the wheel of information. There's so many aspects right now of corruption, appearance of impropriety, and unprofessionalism just by inept, insecure, egotistical maniacs. We have egotistical maniacs at the upper echelon with no leadership experience in life. So there's a good, credible rumor from several different sources, and I think this rumor is pretty spot on, but I'll say it's a rumor. Just, let's just be play it safe here.
It's an allegation.
Of course.
Alleged.
So apparently Kaz Daughtry had a meeting at One Police Plaza with all the personnel from the CRT team. So CRT stands for Citywide Response Team. I like to refer to them as the Criminal Response Team. These are the khaki pants. And apparently the meeting was commenced with the song Graduation, Friends Forever. And it ended with, you ready for this?
Yeah.
The clip from Wolf of Wall Street, I'm not leaving. And we know the message was in there was, I'm not effing going anywhere. They're going to need a National Guard or an army to get me out of here. How unprofessional is that? And what kind of message are you sending to impressionable rookies that have 2 or 3 years on the job when your leadership is telling you, I'm not effing going anywhere? Who are you saying that to? Is that to the public? Is that to Sal Greco? Is that to John McCary, Eric Dym? Is that to the police commissioner? Who are you talking to?
I hope he's not speaking to the FBI, the Department of Investigation, because they'll come and yank him out of there, like when you yank someone off the stage, on one of those shows. This guy is a clown. I don't know what else to say. Oh my God, if that's true, please, if anyone can actually confirm that this happened, or you want to blow the whistle, please, shoot an email to either myself or Eric Dym or John McCary or Marlon Bethel, even a message, proving this happened. That is absolutely wild, but you used to give people the benefit of doubt. But with this administration, I could definitely see this being true. Unfortunately, I would say I would lean towards that probably did happen, because what you think can't happen has happened with these people. It's truly a clown show. And I want to speak of a clown show because yesterday, now, we'll set the table here. There was a Facebook and Instagram live on Corey Pegues. Is a feed. Now, Corey Pegues was a very controversial figure because he was the inspector that had, I guess you want to call him Thug Life. Corey Pegues was a member of the Supreme Team, the infamous drug dealing gang from South Jamaica, Queens, who Eric Adams has professed a love for on a documentary and Tim Pearson, his former, chief advisor or, secondary advisor, but one of his cronies, a former inspector who retired in a cloud of dust. We don't know exactly why, but he was under investigation himself, Tim Pearson. They speak glowingly of the Supreme Team, and Corey Pegues was a member of the Supreme Team who should have been arrested on the day they rounded a lot of their members up. The reason the Supreme Team is so infamous was because one of their associates murdered, I believe, Officer Byrne, which happened in Brooklyn, and because Officer Byrne was in a vehicle, he was facing outward from the housing project he was in, and he was facing outward with the building behind him when this lowlife associate of the Supreme Team shot him and executed him in the car. He never even saw it coming. And he took credit for this. And that's how the crackdown on the crack epidemic in the United States, that's why it started. It all stemmed from that moment when the feds were rounding people up, a lot of them being African Americans across this country, which led to the 1994 crime bill that was started by right now current president still Joe Biden and signed off by President Bill Clinton at that time. And it affected many lives. People were going to jail for 5 ounces of marijuana, going to jail for years, all because of this gang, which this gentleman, Corey Pegues, was a part of. Now we'll say I'm going to set the table with that. Now, I don't have any ill feelings towards Corey Pegues. I would welcome Corey Pegues on this show. I think this interview, we'll get into, my thoughts and Eric's thoughts on this interview. Unfortunately, it was on Instagram Live, but I'm going to set the table. Corey is very close with Eric Adams. He's also very close with Tim Pearson and Philip Banks, the unindicted co-conspirator that also ran from the administration because he's in another federal investigation. So let me put this on the screen. This is John McCary. This is Eric's partner on the Unfiltered podcast. He gave his opinion on what he thought about this interview. And it's the best I could do because I don't have I don't have the actual footage of this. I can't find it other than when it was live. So here's John McCary's take on the Corey Pegues interview of Eric Adams. My biggest takeaways from NYC Mayor Eric Adams' interview on Corey's Corner with retired NYPD Inspector Corey Pegues at C. Pegues. Corey stated that NYPD Chief of Patrol John Schell was involved in a shooting when Corey was the CEO of the 67th Precinct. And Corey stated it was a bad shoot. The mayor defended Schell by stating Schell is running around 24/7 in New York City and always there when he needs him. Corey asked the mayor about his unprecedented appointment of 4 police commissioners in one term. And in my opinion, the mayor completely downplayed it and pretended as if it was all normal. The mayor insinuated that any criticism of his ability to run the city is because critics are saying, we can't run this city. I believe he is saying that criticism of his administration is criticism of black leadership. So let me be perfectly clear. I am saying Eric clearly can't run the city. The color of his skin has nothing to do with it. I base my criticism on his record, which is abysmal. Also, the fact that he was a member of the NYPD hurts other members who run in the future. The mayor defended the appointment of Kaz Daughtry by comparing him to Jack Maple, which I personally believe is outlandish, considering Jack Maple was a supervisor and already had accomplishments prior to being elevated, unlike Daughtry. Corey asked the mayor why disgraced Chief of Department Jeffrey Madre was not suspended, but Lieutenant Quatisha Epps was, and the mayor said he lets NYPD Police Commissioner Jessica Tisch make those decisions and he doesn't get involved in the NYPD. I don't believe that for a second. All in all, I enjoyed it. I think Corey asked some great questions, but Eric Adams is smooth and he will never answer any hard questions, honestly. He is a politician in his truest form. So, Eric, what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts?
I thought John did a great job. It was a great breakdown, and he really segmented each part and fraction of it. I thought, and I was telling John, we spoke about it, I said, John, for me, I felt like I could close my eyes and I could predict what Eric Adams was going to say. It's a typical playbook, right? He doesn't answer the questions. He's a master deflector. You could tell him, hey, the sky is blue. He's going to tell you, not really blue, kind of gray. right? He deflects from everything. He never actually answers the questions. So I thought on Corey Peguese's part, I thought he came off as intelligent. I thought the questions were pointed. Even though that they have a friendship together, I thought that he did ask direct and pointed questions. They were good questions. I wanted some follow-up questions on some of them to really, like for instance, you talk about Ed Caban, the former police commissioner, stepping down. But he never asked him why. Do you think, and I think I understand the reason why. He doesn't say, well, why do you think he stepped down? And I don't think he asked that because, so there's either two reasons. One, because they were pressed for time, or the other one, which I believe, it's my opinion, I don't know. I'd love to speak to Corey Peguese one day, is because he didn't want to box Eric Adams into an answer to reflect on himself. Because if Eric Adams says he had to step down because he's under suspicion, then obviously Eric Adams has to step down. He's under indictment, which is far worse.
Yep.
So I think that was good questions. I don't know if I believe necessarily if Corey was involved in this gang thug life when he's young. Maybe he was, maybe he wasn't. I don't know. I do believe everyone deserves a second chance. I do believe you change and evolve over life. I do think that has to change. I don't know him. I did have an interaction with him on social media. I agreed. I gave my word. I said I would read his book and he would come on the show. I want to read his book. John had read an excerpt from the book, and it actually was contradictory of a question he asked Eric Adams about the John Shell shooting. In his book, he supports the shooting of John Shell that he was involved in, and when he had the conversation with Eric Adams, he did not. So I would like to question him about that. I personally don't support it because John Shell says it was an accidental discharge. I do not support any accidental discharges from what I learned in the Marine Corps. From my opinion, my anecdotal experience, accidental discharge is complete neglect. It's an epic fail. In the Marine Corps, they would say it's just outright stupidity. So, for that reasons, I would say I don't agree with it. Even if your life is on the line, if you intend to fire that shot, I support that much more than accidental discharge. At least you had control and you were professional. Like I said, great conversation. I think that Eric Adams is just very typical. He's a massive deflector, doesn't answer the questions, and that's Eric Adams. He doesn't tell the truth. And so, what are we surprised? But what I also thought, it was kind of a campaign message that, hey, no matter what is happening, with all these things that are going around in my administration, I'm not stepping down and I'll run again.
I actually agree with you there. I think it is a campaign message. Of course, Eric loves to tend to low information voters and people. That's his MO. That's the MO of the Democrat Party. Love low information voters. But I'll say this. Corey Peguese was never charged with any crimes. He's not guilty of any crimes, and I'm not trying to dirty him up, but there is a huge association with the Supreme Team. He speaks glowingly of them, those days too, and how he changed his life. And he wasn't, I know, I never had an interaction with him online. I actually was face to face with him. He was the commanding officer of the 67th precinct, and Sal Greco here was a young rookie in the 71st precinct. So we have crisscrossed. He probably doesn't remember me now, but at that time, there were also rumors about him, and people would say, yo, you know who that guy is? Like, all the cops would tell me that. And I'm like, no, I don't. And they would get into, he's really like, he's had a history. And I'm like, well, but as a cop in uniform, he wasn't bad to me or anyone else that was around. So I don't have like a bad sentiment or any, ill will towards Corey. I'm just stating the facts of Corey's history, because that'll always come up, because they also took the rights that he had to carry a gun. I mean, he's been through a lot himself, but Corey is a good friend. He did keep saying, I came up with Eddie and Eddie was held down. Corey, that's a lie. Eddie Caban is known as the mayor of the Bronx. I hate to say this, but I don't know if he's watching the chat, but somebody said, everybody go to Jimmy's Cafe. Caban's buying when the interview's over. I saw that. So I don't know if Corey wants to just go past that, because there are rumors. I understand it. Corey might have been, frequenting a certain shuttered nightclub now in the Bronx. So I don't know, but I know he's good friends with him. But still, to that degree, Corey did a good job, because that's the best you can do with Eric. You let him talk. If you press him too hard, he's going to give you the political answer, spin out of it, and you'll never see him again. So he got the main question out, which was the suspension. So clearly, Corey, you're definitely watching this show. You're watching the Unfiltered. You're always welcome to come on. We're not gonna hard press you on things. I think you did as good a job as anyone else could do with Eric. We're gonna disagree. You're a Democrat, as you said. I have Democrat friends, but I'm clearly a Republican. I'm not gonna lie to you, and you obviously know what happened to me. But I think that was pretty good. I think there's a way to kind of meet in the middle. So someday, Corey, if you do want to come on, or you want to come on with John and Eric, but I find it fascinating that Eric was dodging bullets left and right with that interview, man. And Eric, I'll be honest. He said, Keyshawn Sewell, if you spoke to her today, she's going to agree with you. She left on her own accord. Eric, why did she leave? There's a reason. Yeah. Oh, Ed Caban, he told me, I had things, I have business to attend to, brother. So I have to, wait a minute, Eric, come on. Everyone, and Tom Donlan, well, we don't do the vetting because he said, don't you vet these people? Well, he's an interim basis. Are you kidding me? And now Jessica Tisch makes all the final decisions on appointments and other stuff when you know for a fact. Right now, the question is she really in charge? Because Jeffrey Madre should be suspended. The only way he's not suspended there has to be something to this. Or someone should ask Jessica Tisch, who, by the way, the police commissioner, the New York City Police Department, and the mayor and his office himself have no statements in regards to this other than, it's an investigation. There's no statements on anything else, and there's a ton of transfers. And I want to put this up while we're talking about all of this, because this is another part of that. FYI, New York City Mayor Kaz Daughtry is no Jack Maple. As everyone should know, there's the plaque for Jack. This is a plaque for Jack Maple and One Police Plaza. This is the visionary of Comstat, and he was a lieutenant. He was never a police officer that got bumped 4 ranks to become a deputy commissioner. He earned it. And this man is a legend for creating Comstat. I find it funny that he even referenced that, but Eric, it's insulting to Jack Maple's legacy and his family to even mention Kaz Daughtry in the same breath. I'm sorry. I don't know what you think about that.
Oh, of course. We were talking about it on a 3-way conversation. I said, I can't believe that they actually made a parallel from Kaz Daughtry to Jack Maple. I think it's a complete insult to Jack Maple's innovativeness and his ability to create a metric of crime that has been not just adopted by the NYPD, but the entire nation. Most large cities in this country have adopted the Comstat style of policing, which is attributed to low-level crime numbers throughout the early 2000s, up till now, of course, because of DEI. But up till DEI, with this innovativeness by Jack Maple, the country has seen a success in a downgrade of crime because of intrusive police work and how it correlates to Comstat. So how can we actually create a parallel between Kaz Daughtry and Jack Maple? Jack Maple passed 2 civil service exams, rose to the rank of lieutenant, had supervisory experience, and also was innovative and created Comstat, which was adopted by the entire nation. Kaz Daughtry has not been innovative, did not have any supervisor positions. He drove former Chief Jeffrey Madre. He drove him around his career, didn't do any investigations. And he's only been driving the drone program, upon request and under the behest of Eric Adams. But he has not created that technology. So to create the parallel is just completely a farce. It's an embarrassment. And it's just completely insulting to Jack Maple himself.
Yeah, I want to get your thoughts on it because I think that's, how can I say this? It's insulting to his legacy and his family. Like I said, that you want to compare that guy with you want to compare a man-child with a legend who basically changed the way policing has been done for the last 30 plus years. And he's innovative. Jack Maple, in my opinion, should have been a police commissioner, not Bill Bratton, who took all the credit. And now you see the empty suit that Bill Bratton really is. All that luster was Jack Maple. So Jack Maple, rest in peace, brother. You are a legend in the NYPD, and you were very innovative. And it's a shame that you don't get the credit that you should for being so innovative. And Bill Bratton takes all the credit, and he's another Eric Adams crony. In fact, it's really sad. And I wanted to now jump into this next part because we were talking about, again, the NYPD. This was another post that I put out recently believe in the last 24 to 48 hours. If NYPD Lieutenant Epps is a liar, why are so many members of service headed for their exit from the NYPD today, including Lieutenant Leslie A. Traynor, who is named in Epps' complaint as a defendant against the NYPD with EEOC? Hashtag the Sal Greco Show. And then on the bottom here, I put this because there was another thing here. For the record, numerous people on this list are not a part of the circle of cronies and just so happen to have retired today. Pay attention to the executive officers like commissioner, deputy commissioner, chief of department, chief of patrol, internal affairs for future references, just so people understand. And so here is the list of people. And right there, name number 2, who that's what I wanted people to really focus on. And just posting this, and I just put 2 names or blanked other names out, which is ridiculous because it's a public document, would mean that people are going to think it's a fugazi. But right there, Leslie A. Traynor is putting their papers in from the first deputy commissioner's office. So, and also, while we're at it, here's a follow-up to that post of mine. Rumor, this is from John McCarry. Rumor is the NYPD's first deputy commissioner, Tanya Kinsella, may be next to be purged from NYPD leadership. This rumor is stemming from the fact that Lieutenant Leslie Traynor, who is considered her number 1 filing for retirement, also her executive deputy chief, Stephen Capasso, was transferred to the NYPD's Personnel Bureau. What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts to the transfer you saw, and also the transfers, the retirements, and then also Tanya Kinsella rumor that she's going to be out very soon?
So discipline is supposed to be swift and immediate in order to be effective in an organization by leadership. So this is an epic fail that Tanya Kinsella is actually still in the position as first deputy commissioner. If we were talking about a private industry right now, she would already be terminated. If, in fact, she is supposed to be the overhead and oversight for overtime, it's an epic fail. No matter what, if there's a scandal or not. There's an egregious amount of overtime that was abused, whether it's misconduct, whether it's criminal, whether it violates policy. You spent taxpayer money, complete epic fail, whether you knew if there's a sex scandal or not going on, or if it's just complete failure. If you had no idea, just grossly incompetent, you failed. And the fact that action has not been taken is an epic fail. And that's why I question Jessica Tisch's leadership at this point. Is she really cleaning house, or is it cleaning itself and she just happens to be taking credit for it? And is she a patsy for Eric Dym? Because Tanya Kinsella, how is she still in this position? She testified to New York City Council that there's biweekly meetings to determine if there's misuse and abuse of overtime. That is your job. You had one job, epic fail. If Jeffrey Madre left, so should she.
I 100% agree with you, Eric. And once again, for anybody that may be on that list or retiring, or maybe you're also on this list of overtime, this is not intended to hurt the men and women of the police department that are the workers, or people that are retiring that have nothing to do with that, what's going on in the NYPD upper echelon. But you have to understand that in legal documents and documents that are public, your name might show up as somehow you were on the same order. There's nothing we could do about it, but it's not intended to hurt you. And if people question you personally, if you're on this list, people could always question you, just like they could question Eric Dym all day long about his 50A, where he has all these complaints, and there's nothing Eric could do about it. I even get attacked for my record. I don't even have a record, but my lawsuit, the NYPD, makes me look like I'm Roy DeMeo. So, I got attacked by a bootlicker News, who now is in hiding, apparently, simping for President Trump when he was never a Trump supporter until like 2 months ago, apparently. Like, he's been on 5 different pages. Bootlicker he's in hiding. He's an Antifa guy, Black Lives Matter guy. Then he's a Freedom Movement guy. Then he's now he's a pro NYPD guy. Then an Eric Dym guy. Now he's a Trump guy. Meanwhile, he hated Trump for years. That's Bootlicker. Check him out if you want. See what I'm talking about. Check out his history for the last few years. But that's what I'm talking about. So you could be attacked, and it's not being attacked in a bad way. If you're on that list, people will check you out and see that you don't have any ties to these people. So stop panicking. Don't take things personal. That's a New York City Police Department thing. This is the real world. So now I was going to get into another thing because we haven't discussed this one part. This is crime in New York City. Crime, which is, I guess is forgotten right now with all this corruption. So here's a good post from my friend Reza at RezaC1 on X. You can see this is the Bronx. Violent crime, 2000 to 2024. Another mass shooting in New York State Assembly Speaker Carl Heastie's district with 6 shooting victims. It's a good time to remember that violent crime in the Bronx has hit 25 plus year highs in 2024. Despite this, the speaker has no intention to repeal any of the insane criminal justice reforms that served as a catalyst for this meteoric rise, prioritizing hubris over his constituents. I want to point this out, Eric. You were on a job, I believe, where it says here, 2002, so the highest was 13,000, right? And you saw a huge decline all the way to 2009 when I got on the job. Then it slowly rises, but it's, I believe, still manageable under 10,000. It is now higher than it was over 20 years ago when this chart started. It's into the 14,000 almost. Okay. And that's violent crime. You were in the Bronx, Eric. You were a supervisor there. What do you got to say for what happened and what's been going on in the Bronx, including what happened yesterday? Because Carl Heastie, you know, he loves to party. He's a big connoisseur guy himself. I mean, that's what he cares about. And he's also been silent amongst all these allegations of all his friends, whether it's Eric Adams, Jimmy Rodriguez, the self-admitted criminal mob associate, co-manager, whatever, of Consafrito, the Caban brothers. He was all chummy up there. Now, look, the walls are caving in on the criminal aspect of what's going on here. Carl Heastie's silent. What do you got to say about this one, Eric?
Major failure in crime right now. Eric Adams is telling the public perception versus reality. Perception is reality for both. And I can tell you this, I lived in the Bronx for almost a decade, and I worked in the Bronx for almost a decade. You have to keep your finger on the pulse. And the removal of anti-crime is one of the biggest failures of New York City. And that failure was before the inception of Mayor Eric Adams. However, Eric Adams had a great opportunity with his experience as a cop to bring it back. We brought back this quasi-type teams, this neighborhood safety, public safety, different type of uniforms, but it wasn't the same cops. It wasn't the experienced cops doing intrusive police work. And we have to address there's a major gang problem in the Bronx. I worked at Police Service Area 7, which is housing in the South Bronx. It's the number 2 precinct in the entire, number 2 command in the entire city for the amount of gangs that are there. So we have to address the gang problem. How do you do it? Intrusive police work. You need anti-crime back. You need to bring back plainclothes, experienced cops. And Eric Adams did not do that.
No. And also, Reza's right. The legislation in New York State is a mess. And we've already proven, I mean, this show in particular has proven, the only thing that these politicians, whether they're in the state or the city council in New York, and also the mayor's office and the upper echelon of police department love to do is party. They party all the time. So they act like they don't get along, but yet there they are. Hey, there's Jimmy Rodriguez. Let's go over there. Let's go party. And we're all a bunch of criminals over there. Letitia James shows up, the attorney general. They all get along when it comes to that. And then the next day they're on TV fighting over, well, this one didn't want to pass this bill and we can't pass that. And our 3 friends in the council didn't agree with me. We had a small disagreement. This is one party rule, folks. That's what happens in one party rule towns. This is the end result. I hope people in the Bronx who just reelected Carl Heastie, by the way, this is a reckoning for you. You need to realize what you're up against. Okay? This man is destructive. He doesn't care. He doesn't care about you in the Bronx. He doesn't care about New York State. He cares about partying and what benefits he gets from that. Isn't that very apparent at this part? I mean, at this point, this is very apparent to me what's going on. This is sad this happened. I'm sorry to the victims. You know, at a certain degree, I can't blame the New York City Police Department because as bad as they're being led, and it's being led by a bunch of corrupt buffoons up top, and the mayor should step down already for the good of the people. But how do you move inside of this legislation that's going on? The legislation does not favor law enforcement. It doesn't favor like we used to be in there. Was it like proactivity, being proactive, meaning trying to stop crime before it occurs? So we're not saying go out there and stop everybody of a certain color, because I know the race baiters, Al Sharpton, all those people are going to say, oh, look, even Corey Begis was talking about that on his show with Eric Dym. It's not about the color of someone. It's about the behavior of someone. That behavior right now is out of control in New York City. What are your thoughts, Eric?
Well, the problem is our voter pool in New York City. Completely, we see right now. Other than Curtis Lewa, the Republican Party has not put anybody else in place that maybe someone would be likable. Curtis Lewa had his opportunity. Unfortunately, didn't get it. Does he have another chance? I don't think so in New York City. But when it comes to the Democratic Party, the representation is so bad that people now have a threshold for corruption that they're saying, wow, what happens if we lose Eric Adams? It's going to be far worse. That people actually have a threshold right now for a criminal enterprise. I mean, it's completely corrupt what's going on. This is going to be the biggest corruption scandal we've probably seen in the NYPD, New York City, and maybe even the entire nation in our history. But we have a threshold for criminals. At this point, I hear the message from people in the public, people in the media, like, what happens if we lose Eric Adams? Who are we going to get? Well, so you're saying that you're okay with corruption going on? You're saying that you're okay with bribes? You're okay with a criminal enterprise? I have a problem with that. But it comes down to what you said, low information, voter pool, voter apathy, and people are just at the point where both parties can't put up a great representation of someone that can serve the city well. That Eric Adams has become the default position. Like, okay, I guess we have to overlook this criminal enterprise. And that's why Eric Adams knows it. He's not stepping down. He knows he's at that point, and he's riding it out. And could he win again? Unfortunately, I do think he could. It's scary, but I think he's in a position that he can. If he can beat these charges or get a pardon, unfortunately, he may see a second term. And who pays for it? The New York City residents. Yeah. And he said it in an interview with Corey's Corner, right? What did he say to Corey Begis? If anybody has an opportunity, please take an opportunity to watch it, really dissect it and watch it. And he tells Corey, this is Eric Adams. You're talking about serving the people. He tells Corey that the media holds them accountable. But who holds them accountable? I thought you were supposed to serve the public. When is the public supposed to serve you? But that's Eric Adams. He doesn't see himself as a public servant. He sees himself as a king.
I'll tell you this, Eric. If he survives past January 20th, which may or may not happen, and now Joe Biden's finally out of office and Donald Trump will now assume command as the 47th president of the United States, Eric Adams will then assume the role as the single most corrupt politician in New York City and the United States. He will have both titles at that point, because I don't know what else to say about this guy. He is a mess. He doesn't make things better. He doesn't fight for his constituents either. He says he went to Albany and fight. Where was that? He went to Consa Frito to go mingle with the people from Albany, but they weren't talking about doing business. They were partying. Like I said, it's what it's all about. Money and power, man. That's what they're all about. I have one final post for you, and it is regards to the police department before we go, because it's something, and it's also, this is a post by John McCarry. This is what John posted. A picture tells 1,000 words. And this is from the NYPD Chief of Personnel. And the Chief of Personnel writes, ready to take the next step forward, a rewarding career in public service. The NYPD is looking for individuals who are ready to serve, protect, and make a difference in the lives of millions. The filing period is now open for the next police officer exam. Eric, I don't know about you. This guy, I don't know, dude. I don't think that's somebody that's looks
I don't mind.
part.
I don't mind. I don't think it's fat shaming at all. I think we have to be honest. What are the qualities and criteria we expect from a cop, from a police officer that's going to serve the people right in New York City? Right? I mean, let's be honest. If we see someone that's going to be suitable to be a doctor, we want to know that they have the IQ and the academic scores to be in that position. If we see someone that's joined the military, we want them to be a representative of being a service member, someone that we could trust that can actually serve overseas and protect this country. Now, you're a young man or woman. You look at that picture and you say to yourself, that's what it takes to be a cop? First of all, it's done completely by design. the gender is not even completely identifiable. Is that a man? Is that a woman? Let's be honest. It's not completely identifiable. The features are not significant, which I think is part of the DEI movement. It's a female or male black, we're unsure, or Hispanic, which caters also to the DEI movement. The person's completely out of shape. And I'm sorry, if you're going to be a police officer, a cop, to represent New York City and part of public safety, you should have good appearance and good presence. And that's the first step in posturing and having a presence that actually combats crime and protects the people of New York City and also protects the police officers. But looking at that picture, the message to me is they want meek, timid, and docile. They don't want warriors. We talk about all the time. They want guardians. But a warrior is necessary to be a guardian. And a guardian can also be a warrior. But a guardian cannot be a warrior if you do not have those warrior traits. So it's completely emasculated. That is not a good representation. That is done by design. And they're sending a message exactly who they want to recruit. And that's DEI.
Eric, I have to say this. I don't mean to fat shame anyone. I was on the job. When I was on the job, I might look like I'm in good shape now. I was a lot better shape on the job because I used to work out 3 to 4 hours a day and work. That's all I did. So besides never sleeping, when I did sleep, when I woke up and I had that little bit of time before I went to work, I was in the gym. So I'm very big with fitness. I think you should be super fit to be on the job. Now, I understand people get older, things happen, you have families, you have kids. That picture, though, shows someone who's walking into the job as if you have 20 years on the job and have 1,000 responsibilities besides working all day. So I'm big with being fit. I don't know what that signals to me that you don't have to be fit. We're just going to do things based on, again, it's just when I say, don't listen to people that say, vote for me, we're the same skin color, vote for me, we shop at the same store. That's kind of what the police department there is kind of referring to, in my opinion, and that's not the message you want. You want strong men and women out there that are fit, that are able to chase perpetrators down. You want people that are competent, but also in the mold of almost, I wouldn't say look like a gladiator, but feel and look like I don't even think whoever that is doesn't look confident. And I hate to, shame whoever that is. I don't know if it's an actor or a real cop, but that's not, couldn't you have picked anyone else to be in a picture to say, apply for a job in the New York City Police Department? But at this point, Eric, with so many people heading for the hills and whoever's involved in this corruption scandal, I don't know if you're going to even have enough cops out on the street. So they might need to they might have to hire anybody and anyone they can to cover the holes they're about to have in the next 3 to 6 months. That's in my opinion. Eric, it's New Year's Day. What are your New Year's resolutions, if you have any?
So I always say, I don't believe in having New Year's resolutions. For me, I give myself New Year's commitments. So I commit to myself to make myself better. So my commitments are to read some more books this year about media, about podcasting, obviously to help with the podcasting that we're doing. Read some more books on police history, obviously help out with the podcast. Continue my venture in jiu-jitsu and go out there and keep competing and go out there and win. And, continue this family that we're building between the Finest Unfiltered, the Sal Greco Show, and Marlon Bethel, and many others that believe in the truth and getting a better version of the NYPD and New York City. So Happy New Year.
Thanks a lot, Eric. And by the way, where can people find you?
Thank you, brother. Check me out on X at Eric Dym Cop. I'm also on Instagram, and I'm also working, John and I, we co-host together New York's Finest Retired and Unfiltered podcast on YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, Apple, Amazon, and more. We go live daily, Monday through Friday. Check us out. And, Sal Greco's our good friend, and we're all a team together.
Thank you, Eric. And, I am grateful to call you my friend. We didn't run into each other while we were on the NYPD. We were in NYPD together. We didn't run into each other, but it's like I wish I would have, because it feels like we've been friends for decades. And same thing with John McCarry. And look, we don't have to agree on every little single thing, but we agree on about 90+% of the topics and subjects that we discuss, we agree on it. And there's so many egregious things. And we just want change for the better. And if I do have, we'll say, New Year's resolution or commitment, one is to get back to the shape I was while I was a police officer. And two, I'm going to continue this expose on not only the NYPD, but corruption in general, because if you don't quell the issues and the problems, you can't move forward. It'll always bring you back. You'll always go back. And that's what I'm dedicated to. I'm very thankful for all the people that I've watched this and have subscribed and are, new viewers here, and to the audience that was here from the beginning. I'm very thankful. Eric's thankful for the same for his audience and his show. And I think 2025 is finally going to be a new reckoning, a new year with change on the horizon, real change for the better. Not the change that Obama promised a long time ago. I'm talking about a real one. I think we're going to see some reform around here. And with that, I'm going to say Happy New Year to everybody. Thanks for watching. Thanks for being here. We'll be back soon. And like always, good morning, good afternoon, and good night.